Peer pressure. Pressure. Peer pressure.
And we're live. Welcome back to another episode of Peer
Get your
Pa-
podcasting voice off. Get your reel.
Let them hear the real. We're back with another episode of Peer Pressure. It's your host, Brando, and I'm here today with my colleague, Damisito, a.k.a. Latino Nelly, a.k.a. Shaking Your Belly. This week, we're bringing you...
Cut it.
This week, we're bringing another installment of Peer Pages. Give me some reverb on that. Peer Pages.
Pages.
We are reading Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari in my Rari.
Not gonna do it.
Thank you. And we read chapters 11 through 15.
God, that was a
I
lot
was
of pages.
about to say 16, but
11. We say 1? You said 11?
I'll say 11 through 16.
Man, that was a lot of peer pages to read.
Honestly, it felt like I was reading for school again.
This felt like a book report. This was honestly felt like I was gonna have a test on this. It was tough. It was very tough. I literally stayed up one night till like 1 o'clock trying
I
to.
was not really enjoying it that much.
Hey man, we enjoyed every part of this.
We do it for the people though, and for the knowledge, and hopefully for the satisfaction of finishing a book.
For everyone who was reading along, these are the driest chapters of the book. I remember when I read this book, I remember going through the middle and being like, oh man, they're just not as good as like the beginning and the end is the best part.
The middle one, it's cool. Like even the last couple ones before this were like kind of dry, but there's some good parts in here.
We're slowly getting out of the valley though.
Okay.
Like it's about to get crazy. Like the Gilgamesh project just gets better from there.
Chill out, dude. The Gilgamesh just sounds like the tightest. Like
The Epic of Gilgamesh. Is that the...
it's like a story that they talk about in a chapter. I forgot what. But if you want to jump right in, starting with chapter 11.
Don't look at me like that.
Chapter 11, you know.
Oops, that was on accident. If you watch on YouTube, we got the 2 angles now, son.
You know what it is.
Brandon just upgraded to the iPhone
10.
The iPhone Wakanda.
Make an X with your arms and break it. Wakanda. All right. Chapter 11. Imperial Visions. That's my new mixtape coming out. Imperial
It's like a
Visions.
Kendrick Lamar tape. Having imperial visions.
And I'm wishing that I'm... Anyway, all
You
right.
couldn't rhyme with visions. I feel so the laugh came in.
Vision and a mission. Too laughy. Okay. So, basically it just talks about the rise and fall of empires. Don't look at my notes, Dominic.
I'm not. You straight.
And basically, let me just get this straight because my notes right now, it just... Let me read you what I wrote down my first bullet point. Rome, true empire of the Mediterranean.
It tells you so much.
Yeah, so, okay, basically, well, it kind of opened up with the story of Rome, right?
Yeah.
And how they wanted to conquer the Numanthians. And essentially what they did was, like, they didn't want to waste their huge army. So what they did was they made a border around Numantia, or however you say it, and essentially starved them out, and they killed them that way.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I forgot who the emperor was at the time, even though it was in the book.
King Kona.
King Kunta?
I make up half the names in this book.
So essentially, he was trying to starve out the Numanthians and didn't want to waste his army, but definitely forgot the topic of why they told the anecdote.
So what happened was they starved them out, and then they ended up like obviously taking over them because those people were like they were the underdogs in that story, and they ended up like they were too proud to give in, so they ended up like all dying off, and then this became like a big story. I forgot which. I think within the Roman culture, but
No, in Spanish culture.
in Spanish culture,
Yes.
But those people like took in the Roman culture.
So they're saying, yeah. So thank you for jogging my brain. So they're saying like even though the Spanish people were like really big fans of the Numanthians, Spain actually adopted all like the architecture, the foods, and the religion of Rome.
And the language as well.
Yes, exactly. So what they were just trying to get at, thanks to this headline, what is an empire? Essentially, they were just trying to explain to us how an empire spreads, what it is, and they defined it as, wrote it down on my notes here. Rule over many different people of different cultures in separate territories, And it wasn't like you can't have it be like a small 2 or 3 people. They said like 20 to 30 was a good amount of groups of people. And also flexible borders that are always growing and always spreading. So like I don't think that they can be stagnant. Like they have to always be expanding. That's what I took from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This chapter was like mostly about like how empires, or not how, but like
The empire struck back.
how they played like a huge important part, because before before there were empires, it was just like little places, like little kingdoms and like little conglomerates.
Everyone was kind of separated.
And then this like imperial vision started, and people started wanting to conquering the world and stuff. And so as empire started, one of the first notes I have is empires are one of the main reasons for the drastic reduction in human diversity. So all of a sudden, like these empires started swallowing whole cultures, and they would literally digest them. And it like parts of it talked about like the life cycle of empires, how they would grow and grow and grow and grow until they'd get too big and they kind of fragment off and spawn these like new cultures.
They said that the main causes of downfalls for empires, I forgot what the first one was, but the second one was they said that it would get taken over from the outside. So they said that rebellion from the inside was never a huge deal when ruling over empires. And so they did list a couple of critiques of empires. They said it wouldn't work in the long run because you couldn't rule over that amount of people for that long. And essentially one of them was a moral critique. Like it's wrong to take over certain like areas because it's not your culture.
They said that too, but they also like said like later, one of the big points later in the chapter was like,
essentially they said that was wrong. Like,
nah, they didn't. They said like later in the chapter, they were like, you can't paint empires in a picture of good guys versus bad guys, because if it wasn't for empires, like we wouldn't have the culture we wouldn't have like all the things we have now. And like people,
exactly,
they're saying,
no, sorry, they said that these statements were incorrect.
Oh,
like
my bad.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I didn't get what you're saying.
Like the 2 points, like these critiques are incorrect.
Yeah.
So you can't.
My bad.
They just do what they do. Like they're not good or bad. So go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and that was one of the cooler points, and like they were looked at as bad, but they're like the most common form of like political organization. Like this is the thing. Like we live in and this gets to it like later. I think this chapter set off some of the next things, like because these chapters were kind of focused on how humans started becoming like incorporated in empires, and like how they formed like these mass organizations of humans. Like it was because of empires, and later chapters talks about religion, but it talks about these, and they were looked at as bad, but they're like the most common form.
Yeah, in a way, they were they're necessary. They're like building blocks of how we built our world today. Like this global society we have, they're basically the building blocks of that.
Exactly. Go ahead.
And so basically, some things that did go into maintaining an empire and building it were wars and genocide and deportation and enslavement, which all sound bad. But on the flip side, the empires did do good things. Like they financed the empire, they financed the arts and philosophy, and they created justice systems, and they like provided charity to their citizens.
Yeah.
So you can't look at them like as good or bad.
They talked about the empires like at that point in time, along with like empires forming and the imperial visions, came an imperial mindset. And with that imperial mindset, it was for like the first time in the history of the world, people were starting to care about like animals. Before they cared about like their immediate people. The empires who took over like other civilizations, they did it because they didn't like hate them. They did it because they thought this was the best for them.
I remember that being a revolutionary way of ruling.
Yeah, because all of a sudden now like you have people who are trying to take over the world. Not because like they are evil and they want to like punish people, but because they think like if you think you have like the right way of thinking, why would you not want to take over someone and like
I'm doing this for your benefit.
Exactly.
And so thanks to Cyrus the Great of Persia, my guy, he said that he was definitely taking over people like for their own good.
Yeah.
And he was for the people, and he actually, when he took over certain places, he would let them rebuild like their religious structures and stuff like that. So it wasn't. It might be oppressive in some senses, but in other senses, they were still giving back to the people and still letting them have freedom in like their religions and stuff. One
of my favorite parts too is it talked about like the cultures who got taken over. It was a struggle for cultures who were taken over by empires to adjust, and it took many generations until they're viewed as us. Like let's say like we all of a sudden took over Mexico. Like literally, like we would beef, like we would look at Mexicans as like they're not as good as us. They're not like real Americans. And it would take like a century or centuries until we look at like Mexicans as like, okay, these people are like one of us. Like they are. And that part was crazy too, because he talked about like I think it was I don't know what type of Indian it was. I don't know if it was like Native American and they're referring to them as Indian, or is Indian in actual, like they're from India.
I think I know what you're talking about. It was like, he studied really hard and he was
he assimilated. He learned all the intricacies of the language.
Yeah.
He became like a merchant. He went to college and all this stuff, and then he tried to get a job later on, and they're like,
he got kicked off the train. It was Gandhi.
yeah.
It was funny because in the way I read it, it was like one of those memes where it's like he grew up and he became Mahatma Gandhi.
He grew up and became Bill Gates. Like, those are definitely.
He was a young Indian boy. He grew up and became Bill Gates. But yeah, no, it was Gandhi, and like they definitely kicked him off the train, and like, I think that. Do you think that happens in all societies where, or do you think that would happen if someone took over, like if we took over Mexico?
For sure,
they would eventually assimilate, or we would definitely look at them. I'm saying definitely a lot. We would see them in a different light.
Yeah, no,
like
100%. And that was part of that was crazy because it talked about like as those cultures swallowed those other cultures. Like they referenced one story where this one dude tried running for political office. This was back in the Roman Empire, and he tried running for political office, and they were like, "No, you can't because you are not one of us." They talked about this like thing of like us versus them, right?
Yes.
And then when empires took over new civilizations, it'd be them for a while until they became us. And he was like, this was at the point where this culture that was taken over was on the verge of becoming us. So he was trying to run for office, and when he was there, they're like, you can't run for office because you're this race, you're from this country, you're not one of us. And then like the governor of Rome or something at that point stepped up and was like, my parents are this race and your parents are from here, like we're all from like a different place, but like now we're Roman, like type of thing. Like, so like they are like, even though they're like Roman and they're like the governor of Rome, they're actually, their blood lies like somewhere else. Like they actually came from another empire or came from another place.
Exactly.
And that's like one of my favorite parts too, like of that whole thing. Cause it's like,
they gave an example like in a more, I guess it's still older times, but in more modern sense, like Britain did conquer India, or they colonized them, but at that point they said that India was still like a bunch of smaller groups.
Yeah.
So what Britain did was they unified the entire country of India. So that can be like a positive view of things.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, assimilation or taking these people into your culture can be traumatic for them.
100%.
Yeah. So it's like a give and take. Like you take the benefits of being conquered, with the bad stuff.
I mean, no one wants. It's wild because they talked about it as not being good or bad. Like, and it's like in the big scope of things, it's not. But you look at like obviously when you take over another country, like, and like I watched a lot of documentaries on like the United States, like in like Southern America, like trying to take over like and infiltrate governments in order to put people in power in these in like Venezuela and like these Southern American countries, to put people in power to where they'll be friendly with our government and cut us good deals. And that's like an empire, you know what I mean? We're not technically taking over their, infiltrating their government, but we in a way are, because we want to put people in power that's
our
cool
benefit,
with us.
right?
Exactly.
The whole theme of this chapter kind of reminded me of like gentrification.
Yeah.
Because like you take over a really bad neighborhood where like a specific ethnic neighborhood is living in, and big business or like white people or whoever who has more who have more money or more power in social, in like the social classes or government, they can come through and like gentrify your whole shit.
Have you ever heard of gentrification fences? I think I was talking to you about this.
You were talking about gentrification
They're
fences.
like, your neighborhood's gentrified when you have those like sideways picket
wooden fences.
Yeah, it's not picket fences, but it's like a certain type of fence. I'll have to post a picture. Insert clip here. One of my favorite parts, the trippiest part of this chapter, is I'll read from my notes. Many countries that fell under the Western Empire, because they talk about the Western Empire later and why it was so big. But they began, like the countries that got taken over began to believe in human rights, self-determination, liberalism, and claimed equality under the very same values that were forced upon them. So like Western Empire would like take over a country and all this stuff, and then they all of a sudden would be instilled with these westernized values of individualism, liberty, like all that type of stuff, and they would rebel against like Britain or the Western Empire based on traits that they now believed in because they were conquered by which was nuts to me.
You're
Which was
not my
kind of cool.
dad.
It was kind of justice in a way.
It was
to
weird.
me.
It was
Yeah.
weird. Like you're fighting for these things that were given to you by these people.
Exactly. I think that was one of the biggest things too. Is like when you conquer these, when empires spread, the biggest thing that spread with it was culture and beliefs and value systems and stuff like that.
And now today, like in the modern era, Yuval said something about
Yuval.
Lil Yuval said something about
Yuval.
Lantier every day. I'm just kidding. Anyway, that no one in the world stage today is able to make any independent decisions because everyone is so intertwined with each other. Like all states, we have all of alliances and stuff like that. That we can't make any independent choices or we can't do anything without stepping on someone else's toes.
One of my other favorite parts of this chapter was when they talked about like you can't, like, people are like, oh, you can't do this to them because like you're taking over their culture or something, but he was like, your culture was an empire, like you know what I mean, like the culture that you're claiming, like let's say I'm Mexican, like, oh, you can't do this to these Mexican people. They're like, yo, you're Mexican, your culture was forced on you by Spaniards. Exactly, you know what I mean? It was like, so you're defending the Spaniards now who did the same shit to you.
If you're really fighting for your culture, you'd fight for, like, if you were American Indian or Native American, you'd fight for like free land, or like you wouldn't own anything.
Exactly. And that's what he's saying, is like you can't splice empires from like our history. Like being Mexican, like even if I want to fight for Mexican rights now, I have to understand that where my heritage come from, it's from people who conquered me. It's from Spaniards who came in and colonized my people. And now I'm proud to be Mexican. I'm proud to be like Cortez, who messed up all of our people. You know what I mean?
Given to you.
Yeah.
Like you're too deep in the system. You're fighting the system that was given to you with the system.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And that's what was cool. Is like, yeah, like yes, we could say like empires are bad or whatever.
Anarchy.
But the things you're fighting are literally this. You're fighting with like me being Mexican as the same thing that was put upon you, which is nuts. That part was cool to me.
Yeah. And then in one of my other bullet points was global empire with a with an exclamation point. How possibly in the future, maybe later down the line, I don't know when, there's gonna be a global empire.
You know what they call that?
Tell me.
New World Order. Hey, New World Order.
Who's down with the NWO?
I used to watch hella conspiracy videos, and that's their biggest fear. The biggest fear of like conspiracy theorists is New World Order and RFI chips or whatever they're called.
RFID, bro.
Oh God. Oh, sorry.
Oh my God.
They're putting chemicals in the water that's making the frogs gay. Have you ever seen that?
No.
That fool Alex Jones says that. He literally
Who's Alex Jones?
Dog, get up on your InfoWars.
Nah.
It's this wild Republican crazy conspiracy theory guy who who's like interviewed, he's like on Donald Trump's side and Donald Trump rocks with him, but he gets on air and he gets really mad and he says like, they're putting stuff in the water, they're making the frogs gay, they're making us gay.
It's that fluoride, bro.
Dude, it's wild.
It's the fluoride.
This was crazy, but you should look at that up.
So, answer this for me, conspiracy man.
What's up?
What is the main? Okay, so say we have a global empire.
Yeah.
There's pluses and minuses for all empires.
Yeah.
What would be the pluses of a global empire, and what would be the negative downfall of global empire?
The plus is now like everything is monitored under the same system.
Yes.
So like we think like America is so great, right?
Right.
In some aspects it is. In some aspects it isn't.
Yes.
Right. But if you had like a world order, then like the great things would be put to all. Mm-hmm. Right. So like obviously if we do something great, like independence, like human rights, let's say that's something we do right. Let's just say,
give or take,
for the sake of argument, right? Then those things are passed down to all of the world.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So that's a benefit. I can honestly, in my head, think of a lot more downfalls, like than I can think of great things. But that would be one benefit, is that if we're like, it's easier to help everyone.
Essentially, the good things that hopefully is in every society will be spread throughout the world.
Hopefully.
Right. The negatives is like individual cultures get.
If we have a president, that person literally rules the world.
Oh God,
that's nuts, bro.
They rule the whole rock.
They rule the world.
They rule.
It just reminds me of Renan's. No, Pink in the Brain.
Oh yeah.
So what are we doing today?
Now? Yeah,
we're gonna. I don't even know what he
take
says.
over the world,
something like that.
How can they take? They're mice. Anyway, so let's. Are you for the global empire, my guy? Are you for the empire?
I mean, I'm not for it, but I know that's the way everything's heading. You know what I mean? Because we more or less live in a...
Will we be alive when the global empire starts, you think?
I don't know.
Like,
I don't think so.
2100.
Okay, but that's what they're saying. Like, even though we're not ruled under one rule right now, We more or less live in a global empire of westernized.
We can't make any moves like everyone's dependent on Western culture. You know,
They're saying
all
like
that.
even like China and stuff, like even they're a growing superpower. They like operate under capitalistic ideals, which are passed down from a Western. You know, they're not like capitalist, but like a lot of the ideals that they
Starting to open up to the world.
exactly. And so a lot of the things like we do as like one of my highlights, I think it's in the next chapter. Anyway, I'll get to it later.
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Is that all I gotta say about empires?
Yeah, I'm cool.
I'm cool, man. I really like that chapter, to be honest.
Oh wait,
What's up?
never mind. I lost it. Yeah, okay, we can move on. Sorry.
All right.
I'm looking for that quote. I'll hit you with a pow pow. Found it.
All right, chapter 12, the law of religion.
Man, I went ham on this chapter.
Can
You
I
know,
get some-
whenever you bring up religion, bro, my brain goes. This is moving 100 miles an hour.
Oh, we were both about to hit the bombs.
My niggas mad 'cause whenever he reach for the bomb, I take him.
Every time.
I'm gonna break his reach out and get a handout. I'm gonna take his wrist and break it. Name that lyric, you get a free T-shirt.
All right. Okay, so what I did like,
Yeah.
along money and empires, religion is the third great unifier of the world.
That was such a light one. Oh no, he's opening up the book. You know what
You
that
know what it
means? The
means.
notes is coming in light.
Okay, so basically he classified religion as a belief in a superhuman order.
Yeah.
And so I know it's a little later in the chapter, but
Then why are you bringing it up right now?
because I have a question, my guy. He said that there's a difference between superhuman and supernatural, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't Google superhuman or supernatural to compare the definitions.
Yeah.
But from my understanding, is like superhuman is still within the
The human realm.
the human realm, right? But
Yeah.
supernatural is like outside of its
Supernatural
reach.
is like a god, like an angel. That's the only two things I can think of right now.
Like a god, or
But
an
like
angel.
like something that like is like I was gonna say not real. That was something that like lies outside of, you know what I mean?
of the human
Something
grasp.
mythological.
Right.
And then like
right.
superhuman is something that like is still with us, but it just is something we all believe in.
Mm-hmm,
That was honestly not a good definition. In my head, it makes more sense than when I explain.
I
it
get
out
what you're
loud.
saying, though. I get what you're saying. So essentially, basically, religion in the chapter started off.
There's one more.
Give it to me.
It was there's a superhuman order is the first criteria of religion.
Yes.
And based on superhuman order, religion establishes norms and values that are binding.
Establish norms
bad, my
and
bad.
bind. No, you're chilling. Yeah. So
Those are the two criteria for what a
and-
religion are.
yes, and I also wrote down universal and missionary to spread. Like they were built to spread, or like it spread ideas through religion and stuff.
Yeah.
And so
Oh no.
one of the earlier forms or ways to practice religion was through animism, which was regional. Every time I hear the word animism, I think about animorphs, like us turning into.
Wow, I remember those books.
Yes, exactly.
On the covers.
With oh, so that's the sound they make when they turn into.
The hardest noise is the transformer noise.
That's when they're yes.
A transformer.
So essentially, animism would it would give like deeper meaning, or they would push spirits onto things in their natural world around them, like animals and plants and trees and all those types of things.
I have the origin of God stemmed from the relationship between humans and plants and animals. God's role is to mediate between humans and animals. So that's where like animism came from. It was like humans couldn't necessarily relate to like plants and
Who
animals.
can relate?
Man, R.I.P. Chino Hills.
Oh man,
God. Shout out Logic and his ex girl.
damn, it's all right.
Chino Hills will be alright.
We got Lonzo still.
But yeah, so that's where animism came from. It
Yes.
was mediating the gap between humans and plants and animals.
So when the agricultural revolution started, that's when the spiritual revolution happened.
That sounds like some wild yoga shit.
The spiritual revolution. Overdrive.
Are you ready to go through a spiritual revolution? Have you been living your life in dismay? Are you missing something? Join us.
The spiritual revolution.
It sounds like what is that?
1-800.
What is the cult that does the world something? The one who all died in Nikes. Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's Gate.
That sounds like I have some Heaven's Gate shit.
Right.
Come join the spiritual revolution at Heaven's
God.
Gate.
So essentially, with the agricultural revolution, that's when we started farming and we started domesticating animals and crops. So it more or less turned them into property. And
Wow.
man,
Humans.
can you talk to them, bro? Like, oh my God.
Free the animals.
But when we turned them into property, that's when we started looking to gods to be
God,
voice
who can relate?
gods. We started turning to gods to become voices for these crops and for these animals. So there would be like sheep gods.
I can't speak to this. What is he saying?
So it was becoming less regional. It was becoming more about property and owning these things and owning these animals. That's where the sheep gods came from. The grass gods, the ugly gods, the sky gods.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice try.
Thank you. And they started rationalizing their use of the environment like as their property through this practice of religion and these types of gods.
One of my favorite parts about this entire book is like not only does he like explain, like I feel like in a history book like they talk about it a lot of times like what happened, and like this is an example of like, okay, this is what happened, like this is what they believed in. They went to animism, then it moved on to polytheism.
Yeah.
My favorite part about this book is he explains the connection between the two. Like it's like almost, to me, this whole book is about evolution and the evolution of like not only humans but ideas, and how like we move from animism to polytheism.
This is something I never, in all my study of like in school, like religion stuff,
Yeah.
I never knew the transitions of the religions we're at now and how they form.
And like
from-
why, and
Yeah,
like
exactly.
why, and like what were the effects of moving from like a an animism religion, or
It definitely makes sense because animism, you could tell, is something that seems more local. They're not harvesting animals. They're not like making animals their property yet.
Yeah.
When it comes to polytheism, again,
And one of my favorite things is said like I say one of my favorite things so much.
it's okay, bro.
I just have a lot of favorites. But as empires grew, people needed entities whose power covered countries. Local entities could only unify different regions. So it was like if I was like, I worship this god of this one tree out here, like I couldn't take that. Like as empires grew, like you couldn't take that and like make someone else believe in that, because that was such a localized type of religion. So that's why those kind of like fell out of favor, and more like once we got to like, so that's animism.
There were only certain, like again, like expanding on that, there were only certain types of animals in this region, for example.
Exactly.
Like they wouldn't translate to your types of animals or your beliefs.
It wouldn't make any sense, and
Yeah.
they wouldn't try to either. That was a big point. It's like they wouldn't. I'm not gonna go to you.
They're so PC back then.
It really was like, I'm not gonna go to you and make you try to believe in this coyote animal because you only have foxes or rhino.
I get
here,
you.
know
I
what
get
mean?
you. But anyway, moving on. Again, polytheism spread with a larger kingdom territory.
Yeah.
And
What?
they,
Sorry.
they saw the world as a reflection between gods and humans. The polytheists did, and they still, in polytheism, they still acknowledged one supreme power that would rule over all these smaller deities that they would worship. But again, what was unique about that was that deity that they would worship, that one supreme being, would be it would be very unbiased. It would be neutral. Like it was just the source. It wasn't like anything that had feelings or impartial or anything else.
That part was nuts because I think like these polytheist gods mostly reflected like humans. Like to me, this is like one of the purest religions, because not the purest, but like these, like if you read about these gods, they were like jealous. They were like evil. They were, you know what I mean? Like they were not like perfect human beings. They were 100% reflections of who we are.
Exactly.
Like they were like different people who, some of them were good and some of them were bad, and some of them had these bad parts of them.
Right.
And then they also like believed in like one supreme god, but didn't give a shit. Like
no,
it
they would
literally-
only focus on their local, or the ones that they wanted to focus on, those deities.
That was wild that the main god like didn't it could give a shit about what we were doing.
Have you heard the watchmaker theory, where
God. Yeah.
the god or the creator of all this is like, he's like a watchmaker. He just makes the watch and he watches it tick. Like he just does that.
Oh no, that's not
What you were
what
thinking
I've
of,
heard.
or-
The watchmaker theory is if like when you have a watch, there's always a watchmaker. So that's always an argument for God. It's like if you
Oh.
have like a human, someone had to make that human. A watch just doesn't spontaneously occur. Like a watch has to be made by someone.
Yo, I remember someone telling me that.
Yeah.
She was like, oh my gosh, she was like, if I like threw a bunch of metal parts to the ground, I wouldn't come up with a car. How does the Big Bang explain anything? But in my mind, I was like, wait, but these are like atoms, and they're like molecules, and they're things, and they combine. They're not just metal parts that you can throw on the ground, and the car is not gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite part about that is like, cause like you can do that. Like now we're getting into my like when I was heavy into the atheism game.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Let me throw it out there.
Ooh.
But no, because like what they would say is like if you have like a watchmaker, right?
yes.
And the watchmaker makes the watch. So the watch is being humans and the watchmaker being God.
Right.
Then the question, like a lot of people say you can't have a watch without a watchmaker, right? Then you can ask the question, then who made the watchmaker?
Right.
Because if you have that's the same question. You know what I mean? It's if the watchmaker had to make the watch, then who made the watchmaker? And you say there's two answers. Oh, he was always there, or like he's like, and you could say the same shit about us, or like the create. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's getting into another rabbit hole.
Right. So basically, with the polytheists, they were inherently more open-minded.
Yeah.
They weren't persecuting heretics or anyone that would speak out against their religion because they all knew that everyone was different. And so when they were conquered, they were allowed to keep their religions most of the time. So, for example, Romans adopted...
That's nuts because I have the same sentence written down.
Hey.
No, it's important.
Hey, you know... And they adopted Chinese goddesses and Egyptian gods into their pantheon.
Yeah. Oh, whoa, say it again.
Oh, pantheon.
We're very light on the bomb today. We can get these back in
Keep
here.
those pantheons.
You heard a lot of hit and misses today.
Hey, ladies, keep those pantheons. Panties on.
Keep those.
I'm sorry.
You just said straight.
I just said it straight up.
Can you tell them a story about what happened outside my apartment?
No, we have to save
Please.
it.
Save for what?
Okay.
Side note.
This is a super sidebar.
Nothing to do with the
Super sidebar. Nothing to do with anything. So we were leaving Dominic's house, right?
The pad.
Huh?
We're leaving the pad.
Oh, we're leaving the crib, you know?
Pad.
We're leaving the pad. And, oh my God. And so we were walking to his car and we passed by this girl. We kind of like, we don't brush shoulders, but we're that distance apart. She dropped something. I don't know what it is.
No, okay, so she dropped something. I think I tell my part because my part sounds weird if I don't explain it.
Okay.
I'm walking by and she dropped something. I see her drop it and I go, ooh.
No, Dom goes, oh. It was like oh.
Because I saw her drop something and I turned around and then Brandon saw her.
And then I look at her, she looks at me, and I look down at it, and I felt the vibe. Though the strangest
she was
feeling.
she was acting
She was
awkward
stiff
as shit.
stiff as a stone.
She was acting so weird.
like a statue. And I look down and I pick it up. In my head,
At this point, I saw what dropped and I walked. I did. I
Yeah,
was like,
Dom
all right,
kept
I'm out.
walking.
I'm out.
I picked it up, and I identified it really fast in my head. I was like, "Oh, this is a pad." You know, like this is this is a pad.
A what? This is like a what?
A pad. I don't know what else to call it. I'm not trying to be offensive here to all my ladies out there, but I identified it, and then because it was so awkward, I said I looked up.
He identified it. So this is a bold-faced lie. Is what he says next. Because he just said I identified it. So what'd you say?
Mind you, just keep in mind here that the vibe in the air was strange because she was still not moving.
She was
still stuck.
shook.
Yeah,
she was shook.
She was like, and I go, I don't know what this is.
After he literally picked it up, identified it. As he was standing up, goes, I don't know what this is.
and I give it to her, and we just walk away. But
Can you imagine someone dropping something? Like, there's no need to say, I don't know what this is. That's just an admission of like, yo, this is awkward.
This is weird.
I don't know what this is.
No, but Dominic didn't have to go, oh.
That looked, okay, it looked even, I made that noise because I saw her drop something, but it looked worse because once I saw what she dropped and me making that noise, like, who? Look what she dropped. I don't know what this is. Ooh, smooth.
Anyway,
smooth.
keep those pantheons. What we got next? Okay, you can go. Dude, take over from here.
When polytheists.
Yo.
Thank you for ignoring that. When polytheists conquered empires, they did not force them to adopt their gods. This was kind of wild to me because you'd expect that, right?
Yes.
They were expected to, like, the places that were conquered were expected to accept the gods and rituals, but were not required to give up their gods,
Which I like.
which was cool and it also made sense because like how am I gonna go into your and just convince you that like everything you believed before wrong?
Nope. Do you think that was also I don't know how deep we can get into the minds of the emperors, but like that could have been a strategy to get the people like on their side to keep them tame, you know?
I thought that too. I thought it was like tactical, but at the same time
tactical.
You know, very tactical. But it was that, but at the
Okay, cool. Go.
But at the same time, what it said later is like those people who like eventually conquered them eventually ended up believing in the own locals' gods.
Yeah.
It's like it might have made sense, but then all of a sudden like it's funny because like yes, that culture conquered the other smaller culture,
Right.
but at the same time, bits of that conquered culture got taken over by like they somehow snuck their way into the conquering culture's beliefs. Like,
Exactly.
they were believing in the local gods after a while, which is kind of cool. It's like, oh, we still here. Like,
I think that kind of makes sense going on with the polytheistic though. Like it
Yeah.
was kind of in my interpretation, it was like a looser thing. For example, when like they adopted those Chinese and
Yeah.
Egyptian gods, it was kind of a give and take.
it's
I
almost like
guess.
their group of gods met the other
Yeah.
group of gods. Were like, oh, it was
Oh.
like friends. Like, oh, what's up? Oh, you're here too?
Yeah.
Oh, tight. It was crazy. They said that they would build statues of like the new gods next to the old gods.
Oh,
So it was really like a it was like two friend groups meeting up and being like, oh,
we're cool.
yeah, I'm down. Like that's
That's
chill.
chill.
It's kind of I like.
Oh, you got the group on? Oh, cool. But again, I think that did they just jump into monotheism?
Yeah, because monotheists believe
Yeah, they just. I'm trying to look
that
for
they possess the one message of God. They are more fanatical and less tolerant.
Oh,
Fuck monotheists.
God.
Straight up.
Straight up.
Monotheism is a devil.
Okay. And eventually Rome. So they talk about Catholicism as a small Jewish sect.
Yeah.
Like
sex.
yes, exactly. And eventually I forgot which emperor it was. Was it Constantine? I forgot.
I don't care.
That adopted.
I don't care.
He adopted
Byzantine Empire.
It was definitely the Romans, and he adopted Catholicism as the main religion. And
King James version.
nope, not yet, not there yet. But see, like within Christianity, this is a big difference between the polytheistic gods and the monotheistic
Yeah.
gods. So within Christianity, the whole umbrella, like you have Catholicism and you have Protestantism. Is it Protestantism?
Protestantism.
Yeah,
No, it's
exactly.
not, but whatever.
You have the Protestants.
Yeah.
And
I like
they-
the name Protestants way more than
Yeah.
Catholicism.
right? They like stand for something. Like we
Yeah.
protest this.
I
Anyway,
don't know about that.
they believe in the same God, but they believe in him a little bit, him or her, differently. So,
Good job. I see that.
so this led to. I wrote that this is the most notes I took on one thing. They led to hundreds and thousands of deaths in 1572, the day of Saint Bartholomew's massacre. They killed 5,000 to 10,000. The Catholics killed
Yeah.
5,000 to 10,000 French Protestants in 24 hours, and then my guy, the Pope, had the audacity to celebrate. John
Oh.
Paul
Jennifer, be somebody.
gonna pray in the Catholic Church. No, he had the audacity to rejoice at the massacre of all those Protestant people.
You know what I'm saying?
And he decorated the Vatican with a mural
That part's nuts.
of the massacre of Bartholomew.
off limits. You can't see that.
You can't see it anymore.
Can you imagine killing millions of people and just being like, yo,
Oh, throw it up on the
yo,
wall.
throw it up, throw it up. They have enough. Yo, what's crazy is like you took the most notes on that part. I literally took a bullet on that part. It says LOL at symbol Protestants versus Catholics, page 216.
You know, it went down on page 216.
I just said I was like, that's crazy.
yo.
But one of my biggest theories, right? This is like a
Yes.
theory that I believe strongly.
Yes.
Because like the medium like of the way monotheistic religions are set up is like if you believe in the one true God, our Lord, our Savior. What's the rest of that prayer? Maker of all.
I don't know what that what it
Maker of
is.
heaven and earth. Kingdom.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. That's the creed. You say in church.
Something of faith. The something of faith.
I feel you.
Anyway, because because that's the way their belief system is set up. Why are you laughing?
I was thinking about the Pope John Paul joke that I made.
But because like monotheism is set up that way, that their God is the one true God.
Yes.
They're set up to like conquer people because you believe that. You can't like polytheism was like, okay, it's cool. We have a lot of gods, so like we'll take your gods on.
It's so rigid, monotheism. Like
Yeah.
everyone else is wrong. Like you're right.
Because of the way a belief, not just like Catholicism or like Islam or anything like that, because the way a monotheistic belief system is set up,
Yeah.
it's set up to have conflict.
Right.
One of my biggest beliefs is because you have Christians and you have Catholics, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've thought this for a long time. Christianity is going to take over Catholicism
You think so?
because if you look at the way Catholicism and Christianity is set up, Catholicism, it takes like 18 damn years to actually be in the church.
to be confirmed.
right?
Right.
To actually be a member of the Catholic Church, it takes you like 18 years.
Like, okay,
Christianity,
you don't have to. Okay, here's my little.
Yeah.
You don't have to be like. It's a good thing to get confirmed,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
more or
yeah.
less, right? But
technically,
a super real member of.
technically,
like,
you're not supposed to get
communion.
communion.
Really?
If you're not a part of the church, you're not supposed to get communion. If you've
you-
never
if-
gone through your first communion, your sacrament, you're not supposed to get communion.
Okay.
So you have to go through these steps, which take a while in order to be actually in the church.
Okay. Yes.
With Christianity, they'll convert you on site.
Really?
Bro, I've had past girlfriends take me to Christian church, like, oh, just come church with me, baby. Like, come on, all right, whatever. I go to church. All of a sudden, they're pulling out the fucking kiddie pool and they're baptizing
No
people
way.
on spot.
Really?
Yeah, and they're trying to convert me.
No way.
Been there, done that. Yeah, but
How do you say? Do you say like you're just like nah? I'm like.
Well,
no, thank you.
one of them, they looked at me like, yo, I didn't know this was happening today. I'm so, because they knew, and they're like, they knew what it looked like, and they're like, yo, I'm so sorry, like I didn't know this was happening today.
Oh, okay.
But like in Christianity, like you've heard of born again Christian,
yeah.
born again because you go to church and then
Oh,
all
just like new.
like that, and then you're a member of the church, and then you like it happens like people they give these sermons where it's so compelling, and like they talk about their story as like, you know, being a drug addict and going through all this, and then then they found God and all this stuff, and they're like, and if you want to join me, like if you want to accept Christ into your life, come up right now. They literally fill a kiddie pool with water and they baptize you. The people will walk up, they'll feel compelled by the story and walk up, get baptized on spot, and then they're born again Christian.
Wow. And so that's why you think that Christianity in total will take over Catholicism.
The way Christianity is set up, it's so much easier to become a Christian, and you could do it so much faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The only thing Catholicism has on it is it's so ingrained. Like if you grow up a Catholic, like you're a Catholic for life.
Yeah. So it's a much more. I don't know what it feels so heavy. Like Catholicism is like a super heavy feeling. Like I still go to church. I still go to Catholic church. Shout out to all my peoples in there.
Shout out St. Paul.
Hey, anyway, it's a lot, it's a lot more heavy, and it's like it feels like a much more arduous process.
Catholic church is not fun, my guy. Catholic church is come on, bro. Catholic church, like I don't like Christian church, but it is 100% more fun.
Christian church is a lot more fun. Christian church feels like more. It feels more youthful.
Christian church feels like a damn concert.
I know.
I go in there, people start standing up,
like,
raising their hands back and forth. People start closing their eyes and feeling this.
Catholic church is like,
hallelujah, hallelujah.
That's not even a Catholic church.
That's in Shrek. My guy.
I know. Could you imagine if it was still in Latin, bro? If they used to only do mass in Latin.
Yo,
But
that'd be
yes.
that'd be wild. But that's Dom's crazy theory for the day. Christianity is gonna take over.
All right, and so secretly on the so what I like that he gave this little analogy or
On the low, I already know what you're going,
of
my
the
guy.
house, right? So
that's not where I thought you were going.
Am I too okay? Anyway, so basically, monotheism, seemingly from the front of the house, like they kicked polytheism out the front door, but they let him in.
Yes,
But they
this
let
is where
him
I thought
into
you were going.
Yeah, but they let all the ideals of polytheism into the side window or the side door, whatever. So let's take Catholics, for example.
Yeah.
They have their one supreme God, which is rooted in
Supreme.
Yes, in Supreme New York.
Can you imagine God comes down with a logo boxing?
He has the Supreme boxers on. Why is Jesus always so buff on the cross?
Why is he always so white?
Oh. Anyway, okay, so we forgot to cover what we did forget to cover. Sorry, backtracking a little bit was dualism.
No, that's later.
Oh, that's later?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's coming
yeah.
up. It's coming up after the Saints.
Okay,
part.
got you.
So
So
after the whoop part. Go ahead. Sorry.
So Catholics had their one supreme God, but here's where the polytheism slips in, where they had these saints. And so it's similar to those deities that the polytheists were practicing, where they would have their one supreme being. Except in Catholicism, the supreme being did have an opinion, or he was opinionated, and he did. I don't know if he wasn't flawed, but he did have certain values that you had to uphold.
Yeah.
And basically, like, you have saints for everything. Like, you have the saint for travelers.
Santo Domingo.
Yeah, that. You have the saint.
Santo Domingo.
You have the saint for
Saint Peter.
Yeah, saint for protection, saint for waffles. There's a
Saint
lot.
Raphael.
Yeah, exactly. So there were all types of saints, which was very similar to the polytheistic.
Saint Guapo.
For handsomeness.
No, yeah, that part was crazy because like Okay, because you grew up Catholic, right?
Hell yeah.
Are you like? Do you? I didn't know about any saints like that, but I know like in a lot of Hispanic like communities, like saints are big.
Yeah,
like
no.
saints are. But like for me, like growing up Catholic, like I didn't know about any saints. Like it
So-
wasn't a big deal for me.
I around my house we have all those little saint statues.
Yeah.
So like all the saints, like
I know the saint cards. You know the laminate
Yeah,
cards. That's the
oh,
only thing I know.
I remember I used to like carry around a saint card and stuff.
Hey,
You know what it is?
keep
But,
it-
like Saint Jude, like the saint.
Saint Jude.
He's so he's like the patron saint of like medicine or healing or
Yeah.
something.
Oh, Saint Jude, the hospital.
Yeah. There it is.
You know?
Exactly. So we had his statue in the house. There was like a bunch
In
of
the house. Saint Jude in the house. That was a girl, but all right.
Anyway, those are all like we had those statues in my house growing up. So
Yeah.
I was.
Do you have a
always,
lot
like,
of them, or was it just like
it was
one
a,
or
it was
two?
a lot. It was a lot. Like I
okay.
don't know where we get them from. Like the Catholic store. Like I don't know where we get these statues from.
The container store, the Catholic store.
Exactly.
No, that was weird because like my experience growing up Catholic, it was like it was Jesus, God, the Holy Trinity. And
Right,
I didn't
right.
know about all the saints. My grandma and all that was into that, but like that, I didn't know about
Yeah.
that growing up.
So just going back to the polytheism and the monotheism, what it was this part was a little bit confusing for me. Let's just dive right in.
All right, let's
So
get into it.
to justify like evil in the world, there were some practitioners.
Here we go.
So there's monotheism, polytheism, and dualism.
This is my favorite because this is where like actual logic comes in. It's like this doesn't make
Who
sense.
can relate?
Who can
So they had to justify why
having
an all-powerful God.
having an omnipotent God.
Yes.
So it's a God that knows all, sees all, is all good.
Exactly.
Then the question that like atheists always love pressing like religious people with is like, oh yeah, then why do good things happen or bad things happen to good people?
Yeah, exactly.
That's like the trump card. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's what people like try to come at you with. And it's like if you have an omnipotent God, that's what they're saying is that's a hard question to ask. Or that's
like, how is all this stuff happening still?
Exactly.
When he or she is like still ruling over everything, is like can see everything, can be everywhere.
why would they let these little kids die like at like Parkland, like or something like that? Why would God
Exactly.
allow that to happen?
Exactly.
And what they're saying is like dualism before monotheism. Dualism was something that existed, and dualism believes in an independent good spirit and an independent bad spirit
Who are constantly
at battle.
Yeah. You know what this reminds me of? That picture of
You know,
Jesus and the devil arm wrestling in front of a waterfall.
I've never seen that. I've never seen that before.
It's Jesus and like all this holy shining light, and the devil on the left side, he's like made of magma.
That's
and,
hilarious.
And they're arm wrestling in front of a waterfall.
That reminds me I thought you were about to go there too. The thing that reminded me of was World Industries. Do you remember World Industries?
Yes, Flameboy and
Flameboy and Waterboy.
yeah,
That's not the
exactly.
other name.
I don't know.
But,
I know what you're talking about though.
but yeah, so dualism. But and he made sure to make this a point. Like dualism was a belief in like an independent good, independent bad. Right.
Right.
He was like in the Old Testament, it
don't-
never talked about
No.
bad or hell or I don't know if it talked about the devil, but he never talked about like a heaven and a hell or essentially like that type of stuff. And
And-
saying,
yeah.
go ahead.
And so basically what the main question with dualism is like what are the laws or what's the order? Like how is this happening? What are the laws for this battle that they're fighting?
Because it should be chaotic.
it should be crazy, right?
Because they're saying like with the omnipotent God, you can't explain evil. With dualism as like your main belief system, you can't explain order.
I have that written down.
But he was saying the only one that people haven't explored is an omnipotent evil God. He's like,
That's the only way.
and that was like the last sentence of that like little.
Yeah.
and he left it. He's like,
That's the only way.
What
that
do you
can
want?
happen.
What do you want?
The only way for all these bad things, in a logical sense, not
Yeah.
trying to undermine anyone's beliefs here.
Yeah.
But in a logical sense, like if bad things are happening, and the big guy upstairs knows about it.
big guy upstairs.
The
my
big guy knows about it.
My guy upstairs.
Yo, big papi upstairs, he knows about
Hey,
it.
pappy.
Like the only explanation is that he has to be not good. Like he
Yeah.
has to be not the deity or like the supreme
thing we
goodness.
expect him to be.
Exactly. He has to be evil for him to let these things happen, right?
Because if he was omnipotent and he was good, then everything would be chill down here. And he says they say later in the chapter that they try to explain it with free will, like God gave us free will. But if he was omnipotent, why would he let us why would he let
exactly.
Why would he let evil exist?
Or even like if he knows that we're gonna turn out to be a bad person or make bad decisions,
Yeah.
why would he create us?
Exactly.
So
The only answer is
he's
God
gotta
is
be
evil.
bad See, that sounds terrible. If someone were to extract that,
The way he left that was
This-
nuts.
yeah.
He just like he was like, it was like a mic drop in the book.
Wow,
That's it. I mean, take it as you will.
mic drop's the hottest thing of 2018. Like
Mic drop.
Anyway, but monotheists also adopted these dualistic ideas. Like for example, in Catholicism,
Yeah.
Satan. You know, they
Oh,
or
going there.
or the devil. You know,
Yeah.
and
The D man.
another.
D man. The demon. The D man.
Okay. And so, like body and spirit, which was
Yeah.
like the separation of evil, which was your physical body, and your spirit, which was good. That was another dualistic ideal.
That thing is always crazy to me. Like, I like how many people have grown up with like issues, like because they think that like on the inside, like this thing that's in us, like this. I think a lot of people confuse like a soul with consciousness. You know what I mean? Like that's the good part
Or
of
like
us.
self awareness, right?
Yeah, and our body is evil. Like that's like what? Like how is that gonna ever like get you to a point where you are okay with yourself if you're thinking a part of yourself is evil?
That might be one of my least favorite aspects of like the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Even though it might not be something that they push a lot, or it's something that I know is present, where it's like the natural instincts your body feels. You know,
Yeah.
they suppress them in like weird ways.
Yeah.
Like you're not supposed to.
and
have
then you
sex
end
or-
up like touching little boys as priests.
Let's not
like,
go that far.
I mean,
Let's not-
come on,
I
bro.
wasn't going that
It just makes me
far.
angry.
I know where you're coming from, but yeah, exactly. And it comes out in weird ways, and like you feel bad for indulging in these things, that,
Yeah.
or like pleasures of the flesh, like when they try to make it all
Yeah.
weird, you know. But it's like I hate to be that guy. It's like natural. It's like a natural thing to do, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? To want those things.
It's just crazy how you could think that like something or separate. To me, the main thing that I don't like about that is it's separating yourself from yourself. It's thinking, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's thinking you're this thing that's not you.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I think that like the truest peace comes from like when you realize that you are here and you're like one with your body.
Accepting your whole self.
Because we're taught from a young age that we are this thing that's behind our eyes, that's trapped. You know what I mean? We're
Exactly.
trapped in our body.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help you with anything.
Yeah.
That it does the opposite. I
It
think.
only makes more of a divide when you think about yourself.
You're literally divided between between you and yourself.
Who's gonna save me from me?
Who can relate?
More religion, the laws of nature.
Oh, here we go. Bro, this honestly, this is part of the book. I was like, come on, my guy.
Like
I'll
in
tell
a
you
bad
why.
way?
Yeah, I'll tell
Go
you
ahead.
why.
Just go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, because then he starts getting into these what is it? They're called
laws like
natural
law
law religions.
Yes.
And this is where he starts talking about like other religions like Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, and he also starts talking about things like communism and
Ooh, okay.
So he starts talking about these things that are rewind. There's two criteria. There's a superhuman order, and based on superhuman order, there are religions established norms and values that are binding.
Yes.
And so like Buddhism is a religion, but what's separating, a lot of people call communism and things like that an ideology, but he says that's just semantics. They're essentially a religion in the
Right.
ways he described it, in the ways he defined
Exactly.
criteria for religion.
Did you when you were reading this, did you think about like he went pretty in depth about Buddhism?
That's literally my biggest gripe with this chapter.
Is like too much of that? Or
He
like,
literally, okay, because if there is one thing is it prescribe to?
I don't think that's I get what you're saying.
Ascribe?
I don't think it might be. It's not subscribe. It's like you could just say like one thing I align with, or like
No, I won't prescribe to. I want one thing I prescribe to the most, and the books I've read the most on is Buddhism.
yes.
And just because it's not, I mean, Buddhism. I think he touched on it too, because I don't know much about the actual religion. I know much more about the mindset.
You're more spiritual than you are.
I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. But like, and I agree with their life outlook. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
like the one thing we're trying to do is alleviate suffering and to be in the present moment, not to be happy, not to chase happiness, but to be present and to be okay with it.
Feel your feelings as they come.
One of my favorite things it said. Oh damn! I better write this down. I'm gonna be pissed. Oh, I skipped pages.
You got this.
Buddhism goal is suffering exists. How can I escape it? Christianity is God exists. What does he want from me?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So we're like in Christianity and in Catholicism, you're trying to please someone the entire time. So you're literally trying to go against natural instincts or things that you actually feel. Because if you grow up like a certain way, you're gonna feel some things,
Right.
and God is telling you that these are wrong.
Not like this is wrong, but in most of the homilies or sermons I sit through, it's like, how can you give yourself more to God?
Yeah.
In Catholic Church when I go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, same thing.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know what I mean? And then so that's Catholicism's, Christianity's goal of breaking down into like a sentence. And Buddhism's goal is suffering is this, how can I escape it? And that's something like I'm like, yes. Like
Yeah.
I think the main goal, I got this tattooed on me,
YouTube exclusive.
is to alleviate suffering.
Right.
And like how can I alleviate suffering for myself and how can I help other people be happy and okay with how they're living and alleviate suffering.
So the main thing, the remedy to that, or to reach nirvana, is to erase all wants or erase all needs, right? All earthly tethers and earthly desires. You can't want or you can't like be attached to
I'm not
anything.
tied down.
You know what I mean?
You ain't gonna tie me.
Which in a way makes sense because when you have expectations,
Yeah.
not everything will match those expectations or be exactly how you want them to be. So without wanting or desire, you can't. You don't feel sadness or you don't feel pain, right?
Yeah.
But in my head, the whole time I was reading this, I don't know if he touched on this at all, but like, how do you make progress, or can you strive for something when you are like a Buddhist? Like, can you strive for goals, or like, can you try to reach for the mountaintop when you are that?
This is wow.
I'm not Buddhist. Dom might.
I'm not Buddhist. I'm
right,
not Buddhist,
right,
but
right.
I've read a couple books, and
Right,
I'm not Buddhist, but I've read a couple books.
You know.
But and like that's something like I like a lot. But there's two things. I want to say this first.
Yeah.
My main thing I don't agree with in this chapter is it seemed like he was like, I think he hid his bias a good amount of the time. I think in this chapter it came out.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like he's clearly like thinks the Buddhist ideals and the Buddhist like way of life.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell like this is like something he believes in.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It makes sense too because it's more like the ideals are more centered in like how we're living in the world we see in front of
Exactly.
us, as
And
opposed to like Catholicism where it's like you don't see it, you know.
Exactly. And so that's something the book did a pretty good job up until this point of being unbiased.
Right.
And even though like I agree with what he's saying, so I can't be too mad, it's like, yo, like come on.
I get that.
You know what I mean? Like just and it was like a lot of pages about it. You know what I mean?
It's pretty deep.
Which is weird that like I'm mad about it because like I agreed with a lot of it. You know what I mean? But anyway, my thing about that is like that's a good question because if you're cool with everything and you're really like I don't want to say passive, but just like I'll be all right. Then like at a certain point it becomes hard to if you're always all right, then you're never going to like
Push to the next plateau or the next level.
Or if something is wrong, you're like a clay and you can adapt. You know what I mean? Instead of like pushing for something you want, you're adapting to everything and you're constantly molding yourself into everything else instead of like being a little bit more firm and like you know what I mean? And that's one of my main like not gripes, but that's something I feel because I believe that like you should be okay with everything and like you can be okay in any situation and like I'll be good no matter what. But at a certain point, when do you fight back and fight for what you want?
Yeah. So I have no idea. Like, and he talks about like when you feel an emotion or something, like you're supposed to like in Buddhism, like you just feel it. You're not striving to be something different than what you are right now.
Yeah.
But like people want to be happy, right? Like, isn't that a thing? Like you want to be better.
I think this is breaking it down like pretty simply because like I think too at the same time like one of my favorite books of all time is The Art of Power. By I can never say the full name. It's just called The Art of Power. and what it is about being happy in the present moment and that being like people think power is like you know, physical strength, you know, like monetary strength, but it's really the ability to be happy in the present moment. And he talks about that like yes, people want to be happy, but you can be happy all the time. And so that's still with what you're saying though, because like if you're happy all the time, then you're not striving for anything,
right?
Because you're happy right now, you have everything you want right now. So that's my main gripe with it too. Is like yes, I can be happy right now, but I also want to strive for things greater, and I want to do a lot of things.
Maybe we just don't know what. Maybe they do have like an answer for that in Buddhism. I don't know. We maybe just don't know.
Let's get a monk out here, my guy.
Hey, next episode we got a monk coming on, straight from Tibet,
straight from Hacienda Heights.
Peer pressure.
And we're back.
Oh,
So-
we got bro. I knew that religion chapter. We're only on chapter
We're
2.
only
We
check-
got
we're only
3
second-
more.
Yeah. I mean, the rest of it is basically he goes into
Liberal humanism, socialist
yeah,
humanism. That's
syncretism and stuff.
Let's skip that.
All right, and we have a chapter 13. I don't know what it's called. I didn't write it down.
The secret of success.
Oh man, you want to
secret.
kick it off for me, brother? Let me get
The secret of success. The difference between how and why. This was kind of cool because it talked about.
Oh yeah.
This is what I was talking about a little bit before. I was talking about how when you're trying to look at the how, it's reconstruct series of specific events. When you're looking at the why, it's find casual connections that account for it. So the why is like what I was talking about. Was like, why did we move from animism to why did polytheism become more popular? Why did monotheism become more popular? How is like, oh, because this conquered this, and you know what I mean?
He explains in the book specific examples like why is Dutch not one of the most prominent languages in the world, and why is English one of the main languages throughout the world?
Tell them why you like this chapter.
Because it's not there's no like it's an explanation of like exploration of like why things are and how things it's like a softer it's a little softer,
very
you know.
fluid.
Yeah, it's a little more fluid, and I like those playing with those concepts in my mind. He described life and time as like a road or like whatever.
It's a path, it's a
Yeah.
journey.
And so there's a lot of different branches, but the path to like the future is like a straight shot. And like, why don't we like veer off? I don't know if I'm using this example correctly. But like, why we don't know in the present, we don't know what the future holds. That's super true. And it's like we don't know if China's gonna become a real superpower or if America's gonna start slipping backwards and decline.
What is it? What is it saying? It's the hindsight's always 2020.
Yeah,
It's really like saying in the present, like it's hard to see, like it's hard to pick up on these trends. Like, oh, monotheism is going to be the future. You know what I mean? Because we're in it right now. But looking back at it, like, oh, that's why this happened and this happened because of this happened.
And like no one in the past, like Islam started very small, like somewhere in I forget where.
Wow, so uncultured.
Yeah, but and no one in those empires that it started conquering expected it to start conquering
pop
them.
off.
Yeah, no one expected Islam to start like popping off.
When he was talking about Islam, he was like, wow, he was kind of amazed. He was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I can't believe this happened. Like, he's
Right.
like, not in a bad way, but just the way its origins, it didn't seem like it was going to be something like Christianity.
It reminded me of
or mommy.
It reminded me of like
Love a girl
rappers.
that
It's like, how do you know this rapper's gonna pop off? Like, we didn't foresee.
How'd I know Kendrick Lamar was going to pop off?
No.
I just know. You just
It's like
know.
it's like you see this rapper like let's take
Kendrick
Pac-
Lamar.
Okay, let's take Kendrick Lamar and let's take two rappers. Okay?
West Coast.
West Coast rappers. Well, Pac Div is a group. So Pac Div, when we were in high school, was like super popping. Like they
Yeah.
were like, oh, we were big fans. We saw them live a bunch of times. In my head, I don't know what you thought, Dom, but like I thought that they were like gonna like pop off because
Yeah.
I was a huge fan, and I thought Kendrick Lamar. I didn't know, like I wasn't sure. Let's be real. Let's be
Wow.
real.
Who always knew?
Dom,
Who always knew?
Anyway,
Okay, just had to throw that in there.
but like no one foresaw or was able to foresee like Kendrick pop off like how he does, like how he did.
I did.
He's like he's huge now.
Don't say no one. I just had to throw it in there.
I get what you're saying, but like
I know what
it's
you
hard.
mean,
It's
yeah.
hard to see that though. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to see that foresight. You know what I mean? And he talks about types of chaoses. So
My
in the
favorite part of
chat,
the
yeah,
chapter.
he talks about a level 1 chaos.
Sounds like hurricanes.
Yeah, right. Level 1 chaos. My new single out right now.
God,
Anyway.
it was meant to rap.
I love hip hop. Anyway, level 1
colors.
chaos, for example, is like the weather. So like we can put a bunch of satellites in the sky and make predictions on the weather, what it's going to be like tomorrow, but the weather is not able to react to those predictions. So the weather's going to do its thing no matter what. Like,
Regardless.
Yeah, regardless if we make predictions that it's going to rain or not. History, on the other hand, is a level 2.
Chaotic system.
Tell me what it is, Tommy.
A level
please.
2 chaotic system reacts to predictions about it, i.e. the stock market.
Hey, so for example, like if I tell you, yo, you better, this is insider trading. Like, yo, you better like take your money out right now. It's gonna plummet or sell it right now, whatever. Like you
Enron.
yeah, like you can do that, and like you can say like, or no, sorry, that was a bad example. Like you're gonna lose money because this is gonna drop or
Yeah.
whatever, right?
They make a prediction that the stock market's about to uptick next week.
Right.
So everyone starts buying stocks.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, because they buy all those stocks, then it doesn't ever go up or it
Right.
goes down. It
So
does
it's
the
like your
opposite.
prediction was wrong.
Exactly. They told the example of someone who said there's going to be a revolution, And like if scientists could make up a machine that could tell when revolutions are going to happen, all of a sudden they make up this machine and they go to the emperor like, yo, we'll sell you this information. We made a machine. We can make accurate predictions about when revolutions are going to happen. They go to tell him there's a revolution that's going to happen at the end of next year.
Yeah.
All of a sudden the emperor does all the things. He starts giving money back to the community, starts doing, lowers the taxes, starts making all like, gives them a lot more like health benefits and all that stuff. And because he does all that stuff, all of a sudden there's not a revolution. And then he goes back to them. He's like, yo, what the fuck? Like,
No
you told me there's
revolution.
going to be a revolution. But because they predicted the revolution, that changed the way he act. And the way he
Right.
act caused there not to be a revolution.
It's like all the movies about traveling through time. It's like you can't see yourself because
The butterfly
you can,
effect.
Yeah, you can alter the past.
Very true.
But
crap.
essentially, we study history not to predict it really, but to see like the broader horizon of history and try to discover the why things happened.
I think we're good on this chapter.
Me too.
Just because there's one more thing I want to talk about with the chapter, but I mean, I'm cool on
Yeah?
that. Yeah, I'm cool. There's more stuff to get to.
Chapter 14.
I'll just say this: memetics.
Oh.
It's not what you think.
Oh, okay. Leaving with a little Google.
Well, because like, okay, let's get into it real quick.
Do it.
Memetics is my favorite thing because memes are actually people think they're like funny pictures and shit, but memes like actually they started as they're basically genes for your head.
Culture genes in a way.
They're culture genes. So like as a meme, like you have stronger memes, and like religion is one of the strongest memes out there because it gets in your head, and once it gets in your head, like you're gonna pass it down to your kids, and that's a meme that's gonna be reproduced in your kids.
Like a crude idea of biology, like how DNA gets passed on. Like memes are DNA in your head.
And he talked about people getting mad because it's like they relate like these cultural ideas as genes and how they're passed down.
Yeah.
And people get mad because it's too simplified or whatever.
Yeah.
But memes is like there's a whole nother book, Richard Brody. It's on
Don't hate on the Brody.
It's on memetics, and that's one of my also favorite books because it's how the culture is passed down.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
All right. Chapter 14.
the discovery of ignorance.
So
What a
basically
title! What a title!
What we're getting into is the scientific revolution.
We're not there yet. Oh, we got in there. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's all right. It's all right.
This work is wild.
So basically, like up until 500 years ago, like the scientific revolution wasn't a thing. But the main story, the beginning story he told us about was the story he started off with in the chapter was the story of the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Oh nah. And basically, this is when like all the forces started combining with science, because science was always a separate thing. But once it started, I'm kind of jumping a little bit ahead, but science became part of society. Yeah, but when it started becoming more part of society and seeing how we could leverage it to make us get ahead of other cultures and stuff, that's when we started taking full advantage of science.
It's when we admitted that we didn't know shit.
Thank you.
That was when science took off, because for a long time, people thought like through religion, through like different stuff like that, they thought we knew everything. And this chapter was really cool because it's the discovery of ignorance, and it says from 1000 to 1500, not much changed. It gave the not a metaphor, the example of like if some dude fell asleep in like 1000 BC
Right.
and then woke up like 500 years later, it would be the same shit. Not much would have changed. If someone fell asleep in 1500 and woke up in 2000,
To the sound of their iPhone ringing.
he would feel like he was in the future or heaven, or was it hell? He literally said that.
He said
in the book.
that.
It's
He
pretty
said
funny. This guy has a little sense of humor. But the scientific revolution was at its peak when the atomic bomb was created.
Exactly.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was remember the three things that define the scientific revolution, and the first one's my favorite, is the willingness to admit ignorance.
Exactly.
Because for a long time, we were all like, oh, we know this, we know... And there's a story about Columbus later on in this chapter that I really like. But science is founded on this idea that, like, I could be wrong.
Right.
Which is, like,
right.
crazy, like, not only crazy, like, in a scope of knowledge, but crazy as, like, as a person, I think a lot of people are afraid to be wrong. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or afraid to say the wrong thing or whatever.
Like when you're in class, I don't want to raise my hand and say the wrong thing, you know.
There's this other podcast, Tom Bailu,
Whoa,
The Impact Theory podcast.
Whoa. We don't talk about other podcasts on this podcast.
but he talks about like accepting failures and accepting being wrong as an opportunity to learn something else. And that's a very scientific outlook. Like, I don't
Exactly.
know, I want to learn. And that's one of the main things of scientific revolution. The other thing is the centrality of observation and mathematics. All of a sudden, we started worrying about math, observation, like empirical studies. The acquisition of new powers was the third one. Because all of a sudden, not only did we learn all this stuff, admit we were wrong, find new discoveries, but we put them to use and got new tools. And
technology.
things. Exactly.
So that's modern science, but with pre-modern traditions like
pre-modern.
pre-modern like religion and those types of ways of thinking, the individual, like, they admitted individual ignorance, and they did not, like, for example, like, if I didn't know something, I go to my nearest priest or whatever and be like, where did humans come from?
Yeah.
And then he would tell me what he knew, not necessarily like the actual thing. He would tell me his
Until
knowledge.
what God told him.
Right. So he would just say, oh, like, for example, if this was a Catholic thing, like,
Yeah.
God created humans. And so what they also did was that they were ignorant of unimportant things.
Yeah.
So the example that he gave was spider webs. So if I were to like ask you again, like, oh, how do spiders weave their webs? Like, the priest would tell me, it's not important. Like, that wasn't in the Bible.
Matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. That's not important to us. So they differ mainly. Just, I think that the main thing was like curiosity and being able to, again, understand that you were incorrect or you didn't know.
Not only did they control what knowledge you knew, but they controlled, like you said, what was important. Mm-hmm. So, like, if they deemed it as not important, they're like, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You don't need to know about that. So, it's like,
Yeah.
they almost, like, dampened curiosity. They didn't allow curiosity to grow. Fuck that.
They were not willing to admit their ignorance.
Yeah. Discovery of ignorance. What a chapter name. So the willingness to admit ignorance made modern science more dynamic. The ability to say, like, yo, I don't know this, made it more, made discoveries. Like, and I'm just stalling for time as I try to find my other note. Real progress occurred when modern culture admitted there were things we did not know and realized scientific discoveries could give us new powers. They started talking into, like, all these different type of discoveries that we found, and one of my favorite ones they talked about is now the way we look at things and the way we face things is we look at things, we're like, we don't look at things as impossible anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, I always think about there used to be this LeBron poster, his arms are like stretched out after he like won the championship or whatever, with basketball in his hand, a Nike sign in LA, and it said impossible is nothing.
Okay, side note, that's the Adidas slogan.
Suck my dick.
No, I'm impossible is nothing is the Adidas slogan, my guy.
I think that was Kevin Garnett.
Probably Kevin Garnett.
Okay, anyway. But so he had his hands stretched out and it said impossible is nothing. And that's the way, like, we as humans now, we face these problems.
Right.
And one of the problems they talked about in this is the biggest problem that we've ever faced as humans is what?
Death. And so the way we used to view death was like something that just, like, essentially we just let it happen to us, which all animals do, right? But we're different because we have that self-consciousness. So we now, with modern science, can see it more as a problem. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, why do we keep dying? Like, we get diseases, our bones get brittle. Like, that wasn't the most scientific term. Like, I don't.
Side note, you know the reason we die?
Oh, the telomeres.
Telomeres, oh my God, science boys.
I was like, I just scrambled. Dom can't send me. Dom can't.
You know what keeps your telomeres strong and sturdy and long?
Vegetables.
Sleep.
Oh, really?
That's why they say if you don't lose sleep, you're literally knocking off years of your life. Because the less you sleep, the more your telomeres are shortening. And when your telomeres shorten, they describe telomeres as the, on your shoelace, they have the tape around the edge, around the end.
The aglet?
So it won't...
fray?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's literally... Oh, just trying to sell me on the fashion?
No.
Your telomeres are that on your DNA.
Wow.
So the smaller your telomeres get to the point where they're not there anymore, your DNA will begin to unravel.
I never sleep because sleep is the cousin of death.
And the more you sleep, the more your telomeres stay in place.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm going to go to sleep right now.
Popping.
Oh,
What's up, Logan? What's popping?
But another thing that so basically,
Can you tell them the story of Gilgamesh before we get into this?
okay, so this is going straight from memory, my guy. I didn't even write it
look
down.
at this.
I didn't write it
Straight
down.
off the dome.
So freestyle Gilgamesh.
Freestyle.
So basically, Gilgamesh was this super powerful, strong warrior guy, and he was in battle, whatever, and
Totally making this up now.
he was in battle,
Trying to buy time.
whatever, and so he saw his best friend die on the battlefield, right?
My bestie, my best friend.
Go best friend, that's my best friend, and he's sitting by the body at the corpse, the body after
got a body.
yeah, and he sees a worm like crawl out of his nostril or something.
I don't know why they include that in the story.
Yeah, and so
Oh, sorry.
you're on my headphone cord.
You just tell me that.
I was like trying to give you a signal, like you're on my cord, you're on my cord.
bestie, my bestie.
Anyway, so he sees a worm crawl out of his best friend's nostril, and he's like, "Yo, I never want to die. I don't want to go through that. I don't want to see that or put anyone through that." And then he fights everything.
Goes on an eternal quest.
Yeah, just to get to the underworld. He finally gets there, fights through the he kills the dude who's like rowing you across the river of death. He like kills him.
I didn't know that part. Wow.
Yeah, he
Dug
like
deep.
he gets in there, he like kills him, and then I forgot what happens after that.
Then he comes back and he realizes that death can never be beaten. For humans, death is inevitable, and that's just like that was his conclusion. It was a pretty sad story.
Sucks.
So the Gilgamesh project is a project that humans have now undertaken, and I wish I could find. We've become convinced that every problem is solvable. The Gilgamesh project, for men of science, death is not inevitable destiny, but merely a technical problem. That's the craziest
That
shit.
freaked me out a little bit.
This is a technical difficulty.
Got to get over it a little bit,
Which
you
is crazy because and you'll see like in these later chapters, it gets like even more wild than that.
They said by like 2050 in this chapter, like we may be able to double human lifespans.
Yeah.
With that, like with the exception of like fatal accidents, like a car crash or something, like airplanes.
They call it amortal.
Oh yeah.
Immortals, you can never die. Immortals, you won't age death. Dang. Which is crazy. And this is something like, and they get into it more a little bit later, but it's like you start thinking about it, it's like, wow, like it is like it doesn't make sense why we can survive for now, but why like eventually our cells stop reproducing. Like if they could do it now, like why couldn't they do it forever?
Right.
If we maintain, like if we keep on eating, if we keep on doing it, like why wouldn't we be able to do it forever?
And they did give the example, like they were able to like double the lifespan of like these worms that they were testing in the lab. So we're on our way. Worms.
Can you imagine?
Yo,
can you imagine?
We're still gonna be alive hopefully in 2050.
I hope so.
Like,
God, I hope like they don't figure it out when I'm like 90 and
right.
I'm like, oh,
yeah,
stay
I'm
the
gonna be
same.
90 forever.
Just kill me now.
But another big driver. So in the chapter, they also talked about how science and technology were separated. Like they were never like used to fuel each other, essentially, right? But what did do that was I know they talked about World War I.
Yeah.
And how like they were still doing like trench warfare and like it was like real slow, you know?
Yeah.
But then they called their scientists like, yo, like what can you guys do about this? Like how can we like
Help us.
how can
Help
you
us kill
speed-
more people.
Help him. Help him.
Help him.
I mean, how
Help
do you, like,
me.
speed this up a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
And that was one of the largest like drivers of technology and science. And they also talked about how the Chinese like they invented gunpowder. And they weren't really using it for like
Warfare.
They're using it for like firecrackers and stuff. I can just imagine them with their big dragons and stuff.
tight.
Like, yeah. Whoa. But yeah, so I guess that it did take almost like a perfect storm of like a balance of like like you could say warfare and economy and social implications to get science and technology together to help each other grow.
That's a perfect segue into chapter 15.
Ooh.
The very first, this is the marriage of science and empire.
Wow.
The very first thing I have written about this chapter is military industrial scientific complex. Why did it blossom in Europe? So this started, they proposed a question at the end of chapter 13. And it was asking like, why did this scientific revolution, this blossoming of technology, why did it happen in Europe? Because all of the places in the world, like Europe was one of the most, at that point in time, Europe was one of the most insignificant.
And essentially what he said also was that like everyone was basically on the same level. Like China wasn't super far ahead of Europe. Like everyone was kind of on the same like plane as far as like information and stuff goes.
One of the analogies this guy is really good at analogies. Shout out Yuval.
Shout out to my guy.
But what he did is he gave an analogy of if like Europe and Africa and Asia, and they're all building a house, right?
Right.
Europe, Africa, Africa and Asia and all the other countries were building out of like logs and mud, and Europe was building out of steel and bolts and stuff. And at a certain point, they will be the same. Like as they're building, you'll see them and they'll look the same. Then you reach a certain critical threshold, and the logs and the mud will fall.
Right.
And then Europe. So like at a certain point, they were going the same. Like Asia had trains. Europe had trains. Africa, like they all had trains.
Right.
They all had the power of the steam engine and shit. But at a certain point, all of a sudden Europe blew up and the technical revolution hit, and then they were conquering everywhere. And they talked about like why. And European culture was more suitable and could harness these technological advances because of the way their culture was formed, because they were capitalists.
Oh, is that why they were? Did they say capitalist? I don't remember reading that, but that is true though. Like it was just the way that their culture was like formed in them, that they did have this like insatiable need to like move and colonize and expand.
It was because they were capitalists and because they're imperialists. And so like they like, because like they even talked about like this was a little bit later, but there was a Chinese conquest that set out. They had a huge fleet, like way bigger than the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. It was like way bigger, right? It was like a fleet of 30,000 people of ships,
huge.
And then go to different places, but they would go and they would just leave. Like they wouldn't try spreading their culture or learning new things. Like they would go and dip.
A lot of things that I remember that he said this in the book, like it was like, oh, for my king, like I'm doing this for my king, for my kingdom,
for my king.
For my
Shout out
people.
my kings and my queens.
Oh, it's for my king.
Kill him, king. My king.
Shout out my king. T'Challa.
My king heart to emoji.
T'Challa. But yeah, so essentially, and he also did go into the fact that like everyone at the Industrial Revolution, like they all had trains and stuff, right? But
Yeah.
Europe had far more miles or like kilometers, whatever they measure,
A ton more,
like than Persia and China and all those other places.
Also, it was their imperial vision that helped them conquer all these places. Because if you like talking about like Mongols and things like that, when they set out to impose their own view on different places.
Right.
But when European conquest, they set out to obtain knowledge, and they set out to attain knowledge and new territories. So they're conquering these places. But they said like on the main, like when Darwin went out, and on his his trip where he discovered evolution, that trip was a military trip.
Right.
But they brought along, because they wanted to survey the land and do different things like that, they brought along the best scientists on these military trips. So if you didn't have, that's why they talk about the military industrial scientific complex, because if you didn't have the industry, I was about to say industrial, but if you didn't have the industry, like the ships to get out there,
Right.
the trains to bring stuff back, then you wouldn't be able to reach these places. But when you reach these places, it's military, because you're trying to conquer these places. But when you're trying to conquer these places, you bring along scientists.
Right.
And all of a sudden, those scientists are learning things and surveying the land and bringing things back, and they will develop new technology. So they had the whole thing together. And that's why like it boomed in Europe.
Right.
And that's what's crazy is like you can't tie Darwin to like imperialism. You know what I mean? I mean you can't not separate the two.
Because a lot of times, like for these scientific explorations or findings to happen, like there has to be someone funding it. Like
Exactly.
there's always a different on the other side of the coin. Besides those great discoveries, there's another agenda like they're trying to get to. It is a military conquest. At the same time, they're discovering these things about these places.
They gave the example of like two scientific studies that are trying to get funded, and they're both on cows. One said that they can up the production of milk 10%. The other one was trying to solve like mental disease within cows.
Yeah.
Or like study the mental like disorders that cows have.
Yeah.
Whatever. And say which one is more likely to get funded.
It was it was about like, do cows get sad like if they're separated from their calf or something? And they said that because of economy and because like it's more beneficial to like bigger government or whatever, that they would more likely to fund the one that would
Produce more milk.
or like help the other studies.
And they're saying if that the cow study, the cow separation anxiety, if they wanted to get more funding, the thing they could do is they could frame it like if like their hypothesis, if we can solve this and if we study this, then we're able to produce
More
like
milk.
10% more milk because
Yeah.
the cows would be happier or whatever.
Right.
So you have to frame it in an economic viewpoint in order to
Exactly.
get funding, which is BS because science doesn't have a free reign.
Right.
One of the things I liked about this, they started talking about Columbus and as he started conquering different places and stuff like that. They talked about like maps and how in Europe maps originally, like you could literally see the change in people's mindsets by looking at maps. At a certain point in time, they drew maps having everything that people knew.
It's kind of side note. It's kind of amazing. I feel like we take for granted like the maps we have of the world, like GPS and shit. Dude, people didn't know where stuff was. Like I didn't like you wouldn't know. Like we thought we were the only people that existed. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's another thing I want to talk about because a little bit later we get to Cortez.
Oh yeah.
Or did we already skip Cortez?
No, we getting there. We getting there.
Oh, anyway, but so you're saying about like these maps, right? You look about like the pre-scientific revolution maps,
Yes.
and they drew maps only with what they knew. So the whole world was what they had been to before.
Yes.
All of a sudden, the scientific revolution came along, and they started drawing maps with unknown places, with gaps.
Right. Exactly.
Because they all of a sudden, like the other chapter, Discovery of Ignorance, they knew they didn't know.
You're right.
And they started drawing that into their maps. And then one of the coolest things was America was named after a man who thought that America was a continent but didn't know about the islands off the. So Columbus,
Amerigo Vespucci.
yeah. So Columbus sailed to America,
Yes.
and for his whole entire life, he thought it was the Indies,
Till he died.
an island off the Indies.
Yes.
And then this guy set sail, and I think he went on like
He was Italian.
for like 10 years.
he went after Columbus, like a little bit after.
Yeah, for
yeah.
10 years, like after Columbus found America, this guy for like 10 years made trips back and forth to the Americas.
Exactly.
And Columbus, to his deathbed, said it was the Indies, it was the West Indies. Or
Right,
whatever.
right.
And this guy had the ability to say, like, this is something we don't know.
This is something different.
This is another thing that we didn't know because Columbus, they said, there's this one line in there that says, like, Columbus, even though he was something, he was still a man of that age, man. I forgot what
Oh, okay.
he was from that age.
He wasn't hip with the scientific revolution.
He's from that age where he thought he knew everything. And he
Oh,
thought,
yeah,
this is
yeah,
what I
yeah.
know. And then this guy was born in the scientific revolution, knew that this is something I don't know. And then people started drawing maps of an unknown continent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's named America, because they named it after this guy who was like, I don't know what's
This
over
is
there.
new, my guy.
And they called it America after him.
So, just before we touch on Cortez,
Oh.
before we get into
We have
that,
to get into this, bro.
I want to talk about when we started exploring space with like Neil Armstrong. This is one of my favorite parts of the chapter. So in 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, they started training to go to the moon, right? And they went to like I think New Mexico, like a deserted desert, right?
Yeah.
And so while they were training and stuff, they were in the desert and they ran into this old Native American person, and basically he asked them like, "What are you guys doing out here?" And we're like, "Oh, we're training to go to the moon." And he goes, "Oh, that's crazy because my people, that's crazy, dog. Because
Hey, that's crazy.
that's crazy, fool. Like my people believe that,
crazy, Lalo.
like we believe that people like in the afterlife go to the moon. Like our ancestors are on the moon." Because like I'm getting chills thinking about this.
The
Like,
moon spirits.
yeah, it's like, bro, like you have to pass along a message to them when you go there. Like at least say something when you're up there for me. And then he was like, "Yo, you got to memorize. You got to memorize." And Buzz and Neil Armstrong, like, "Yeah, we got it. We got
Make him say it back to him in his
Yeah.
language.
And then they were like, "Yo, what does this mean?" So they got back to their base. They found someone who could translate it. And essentially, what the old Native American man gave to Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong to say was, "Don't believe a single word these people are telling you. They have come to steal your lands."
And more tune for your head top, so watch how you speak on my name.
That's wild. These Americans are come to the moon to steal
gonna take your shit.
the ancestors that we put up there. Like they're gonna take it. They're gonna take our lands, man.
That was nuts.
That's crazy.
And let's get into Cortez. This is okay. So I took a trip to Ibiza. I'm just kidding. I took a trip to Mexico. I took a pill in Ibiza.
Okay.
I took a trip to Mexico, and I've been there like multiple times. I think I've been to this specific part of Mexico 3 times, but it's Chichen Itza.
Ooh.
Chichen Itza. That's
Beat
not-
those
I don't think that's how you say
pantheons.
it. But every time I go there, I have like a weird spiritual experience.
Right.
I'm not really into like, oh, I'm spiritual like type of stuff. But every time I go, like because like being Mexican, like our native heritage is like Aztec, Mayan, Inca.
It's how okay. Side note: the Empire was like the biggest one out of those, or
I believe it was, but it was in like northern. So where Chichen Itza is, it's more like southern Mexico,
Okay.
like on the Gulf Coast.
Yeah,
That's where
yeah,
like
yeah.
like it's a lot of people go to Chichen Itza come from Cancun. Like they go on vacation in Cancun, and Chichen Itza is like a 2-3 hour drive from
Got
there.
you.
So it's that's more Mayan, but Aztec is more like northern. So there's like great empires: Inca, Aztec, Mayan. But so you go there and you see like these huge pyramids and like all they knew about the sun and like all they knew about the stars and like how they knew when crops, and they had huge empires.
Yeah.
They talk about the amount of people who would come to these cities.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like astronomical. Like you wouldn't believe it. And so when you go there, it's like I was like, oh shit, like this is where I came from.
And so a lot of it is still intact, or like how much of it is there?
I mean, like some parts of it are falling apart, but like it's literally in the middle of the jungle. It's in the middle of the jungle.
The jungle.
And it's literally like these huge things, and it's like cool to see because it was like a world untouched from Western civilization, where like they knew what they were doing. They were smart, like they knew what they were doing. But until Cortez and stuff comes over. But what was crazy about Cortez is they talk a lot about the way he conquered these people.
Oh, it was like a super sneaky way.
It was nuts.
Yeah.
Because what they talk about, the Aztecs, like or Cortez coming over, they talk about like literally trying to go to the moon and like being hit with a rock and realizing, oh shit, there's something here. And then they talk about like the Aztecs being in their own world. They literally thought they conquered the entire world. Their world was such a small sphere, and all of a sudden aliens came in. It's literally like that part kind of trips me out.
They're fair. They have hair color of the sun.
They smell
weird. You know.
Yeah.
They ride these weird things that are fast.
It's
you know?
crazy.
Yeah.
If you could like, it's like us like thinking, because Aztecs like they really thought they knew everything.
You thought
That's not like that's not like saying like, oh, they thought they were so much better, but like we think we know a lot right now. We admit we don't know a lot, but like still we think we know a lot. So imagine if like aliens came down tomorrow.
Aztecs didn't have that ignorance per se.
Yeah,
like
they
they
didn't have
didn't
it
know
yet.
that
Exactly.
they didn't know stuff.
They weren't down with the ignorance.
They weren't.
And then like all of a sudden like Cortez lands, and then they talk about the way he like stole the empire basically.
Exactly.
And so he came in, and you wanna
Yeah, sure. So he basically came in and he was trying to be real peaceful, and then
I'm trying to have a diplomatic interview.
right.
We
I'm
do
trying to-
interviews. You don't do interviews, my
I'm,
guy.
I'm trying to meet Montezuma.
Montezuma.
Right, and so
Montezuma.
they took him to see Montezuma.
Montezuma.
And
Have you know Montezuma's Revenge in Knott's Berry Farm?
yeah,
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Montezuma dancing. Anyway, he took essentially led him to Montezuma with the incense around him because he smelled really bad.
Smell like shit.
And basically he was real cordial with Montezuma, right?
Cordial.
I don't know how they were talking, first of all.
I don't know that either.
But he essentially had his men. I think it was just them in the room, and Montezuma's bodyguards and Cortez's men, you know.
Montezuma. I like the accent you put on.
I'm trying to do it for you.
Montezuma and Cortez.
I'm trying to
Cortez.
get with the soft S. Montezuma.
Montezuma.
So they slay Montezuma's bodyguards.
Henchmen.
Right. And essentially they post up in there and they turn Montezuma into like a figurehead.
Puppet.
Yeah,
Puppet?
essentially.
Yeah.
And at this point, he starts spreading more people throughout. Like, so here's the thing: they were very outnumbered. The invaders
They had
from
like
Spain.
I think they had like 160 or something like that.
I think that was the Inca people,
yeah.
the guys who invaded in the Incan Empire.
Mm-hmm.
But they were really outnumbered, and the closest people that they were like nearby was Cuba.
Yeah.
So Cuba, you know, Cuba Gooding Jr. Fool.
What's the fool's name from Planet of the Apes?
Koba?
Koba.
No. Anyway, so I kind of forget what happens.
Oh, but okay. So anyway, so the Aztec, like the Aztec higher ups, they realized that this shit's bullshit. They revolted. Cortez got thrown out. Montezuma got thrown out, but Cortez was already cool with how everything worked.
Yes,
and he got cool with the local tribes, and they overthrew the Aztecs.
Exactly.
Started integrating their
the
culture.
people that were like enslaved by the Aztecs. They were like, oh yeah, we're down with the Spaniards.
Then all of a sudden, more Spaniards kept on coming in, and then all of a sudden, now you have Mexicans.
And it was way worse under Spanish rule than it was for them under Aztec rule.
But the main thing that's wild, and that's how imperial. And the crazy thing is, like Cortez would come up, be like, "Oh, I'm from the King of Spain," like blah blah blah. and he didn't even know the
Nah,
King Spain.
not at all.
They were independent adventurers, is what they said.
That's crazy.
The main thing that makes me mad is it's not a touchy subject. I don't get mad, but it's just like it's crazy. Like because whenever I go to Mexico and those like because there's still like native Mayan people. I once like dated this girl who she didn't know like I kept on asking her like what are you? She's like I'm Native American. I was like okay like what tribe? Like I didn't know what
What team?
and she's like I'm from Mexico. I was like what do you mean? She's like I'm Native American but I'm from Mexico. And I was like I still don't understand. She's being like but she was a native. Like from because there's still people who are like Aztec and still people who are Mayan and stuff, and who still carry like are 100%. And so I don't know if she was Aztec or Mayan or Inca, but that's like what she was saying. Like she's like, oh, I'm like Mayan.
Yeah.
But it's crazy because you go down to these towns like down there, and there's still people who are Mayan, and you see them. They're Aztecs are tall, Mayans are hella short.
Is that the thing?
Yeah, they're very short.
Didn't know that.
So like but like you go down to these places where like it's like a Mayan town. And you see people who are like this is what I can't like because I've done like ancestry DNA and stuff, and I'm Native American. They don't put me as Mexican because Mexican is like a.
Do you know what specifically which one?
We can guess from like where my family's from, and like my grandpa's kind of tall. He's like 6 foot, so like we think we're Aztec. You know what I mean? But we don't know, and nose shape is something, but it's like that's like family folklore. Like we don't know if that's for real.
Yeah,
but. What's crazy is like you go down and you go to these churches, and we go to these churches at like Juan Gabriel or whatever. All these people,
Gabriel,
and then literally these people would destroy their language, these Native American languages, and they'd force you to speak Spanish, and they'd force you to believe in their God. And if you didn't believe in them, they'd kill you. And the thing that's crazy to me is now Mexican people are so devout Catholic.
Yeah.
Like they're diehard Catholic. And it's what we were talking about earlier about
to bring it back.
Imperialism, how like this is something that it's not them. You know what I mean?
I'm fighting you with what you gave to me.
This was literally forced on us.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like this our proud Catholic heritage is something that was literally like raped into us.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's like it was wild because like we were there, right? And then like we're walking out, and then like I was like pretty amazed. Like I'm younger at this point. I'm like, dang, that's crazy. Like we used to worship, like we used to look at the stars, like we used to worship all these gods, and like we looked to the sun and the stars, and like for guidance on crops and whatever. And I'm like pretty. And some girl was next to me. She said that, and my dad's like, yeah, but like Jesus Christ, and he said, like, and he starts going in on,
whoa,
and it was literally like that was like literally the two sides of like.
Yeah,
my upbringing is like I'm like Mexican, but what does Mexican mean? That means that I'm literally the ancestor of Cortez, this fool who came in, was dirty to these people who like it was their land,
native people, right?
and that's me.
That's something that I don't think that, at least in my experience, like with Filipino culture, same thing. Like the Spaniards came, but I don't know about like native people of the Philippine Islands. Like, I don't know if that exists. I don't even know. Like I have no idea about that.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But that's tight. No, that's a tight thing that you know about. Like
that's why it's like a crazy. So like when I read about that stuff, it's like that is one of my biggest interests because whenever I go down there, it's crazy to see like there was a whole civilization that was like prospering. You know what I mean? They didn't have like ships and all that, but like this was
a kingdom.
Yeah, it was literally a
empire.
kingdom.
Yeah.
That's like literally no more. Like I'm a descendant of that, but I'm also a descendant of people who fucked me up. You know what I mean?
I feel that. And
shout out imperialism.
Shout out to Yuval Noah Harari,
bringing all these emotions.
That was, honestly, a lot of chapters, a lot of pages.
Pure pages,
man.
I'm telling you. I think we made these last chapters kind of interesting.
I think
because when I was reading them, they didn't sound as interesting as what we were talking about.
Yeah, now when I'm talking about them, I liked it. I like these chapters a little more.
I'm telling you, if you listen to this one, stick around because these last 5 chapters will your mind.
All right, you heard it here first. That was Pure Pages, chapters 11 through 15. Thanks for watching, guys, or listening, whatever platform you're on. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, whatever. All right.
Peer pressure. Peer pressure.